Well, hello everybody, and welcome to our introduction to having a bit more ease with coping of the death of your animal. And Viv, wow, this is a topic that most people really struggle with when it comes to the end of the life of a pet. So, what are we going to do in this little telecall that we're doing together?
Well, like you say, it's an area of animal care that is one of the most challenging. It brings up so much stuff for people, whether they're trying to keep an animal alive that really should, it's past its use by date. You often see animals that are they're well and truly done, but the person, the carer, is really struggling to come to terms with making that choice. And I think this is probably one of the most confronting parts of having an animal, knowing that if that choice is to ease the transition for that animal out of its body, knowing that choice is on your shoulders, in your hands, can be one that most people dread. And am I doing the right thing? Is it time? Or I'm not ready, or I don't want to let this animal go. So for me, the whole purpose of this call is to actually create a lot more space and ease around that choice. And also, if an animal is suddenly, taken from us, quote unquote, if it dies unexpectedly through an injury or an accident, or it's been diagnosed with a disease, it's like, how can we assimilate that and process it in a way that we're not grief stricken, and people that hang on to that for years and still hold on to that pain. So there is a totally different way available with this entire process. So my desire is to create a lot more space and ease for you, the animal carer, but also your fur child, your horse, your cat, your dog, whatever it is, that you actually have a sense of knowing when that time is, and what's the kindest way for you to get through that as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think a lot of people forget that part. And what you said earlier too, the dreadfulness of having to make that choice, but also then, inevitably always thinking it was the wrong time. And I know too, I've worked with so many people, or people have come up in classes and had held on to something that happened in their childhood, and they're like 50, 60 years old. And it has really influenced their behavior around animals, or had even made them never choose to have another animal in their life. And that to me also is such a sadness, because so many times people really base their choice to have an animal on that, not wanting to go through the pain of losing that animal one way or the other. And I always think this is really, yeah, it could be so different, and it would really allow so many more people to have the joy of having an animal if they could also cope with the death of their animal with greater ease.
Yeah, and even the dying process, I mean, it's something that's very close to you, because you're friend of how many years? 14, 15 years?
15. Yeah.
Charlie, he passed recently too. So you've got, very quote unquote raw recent experience of this. And that last process, when you've got a dog or an animal that is preparing to die, I mean, that can last for a long time. Sometimes that debilitation phase can be quite, sometimes you have to change your life to fit around that animal. So I look forward to hearing more of your particular journey with this too, because to create that ease for the animal in those last days, weeks, months, with whatever condition that they've got, or that they're, going to depart with, so to speak. How can you best also process that for you and your family? If you've got kids around, this can be one of the most confusing times and distressing times. And if you're a parent, the kids are looking to you as well as to, well, how are they coping with the animal going? And oftentimes how we're coping with it, they take that on. They think that that's how it's done. So, imagine being able to have this last part of an animal's life be a celebration of their living, be a celebration of the joy, be a celebration of the really awesome relationship that you've had, and not have that last part of the life lingering for such a long time that's people's memories of it. So yeah.
Totally. And, like you said, really insert ease. How can we make this easier for everyone? What tools can we give you? We have a lot of tools we can give you for that. And of course, everybody goes through this process in their own way, but we will give you some exercises and some ways to really either quote unquote prepare yourself or let go of any past holdings that you still have with this topic, with an animal that no longer is in your life. And really just make that also a part that can be, like you said, the word celebration, and I love that. What would it be like if we had more of that energy with all of this, and how much more joy could we really have till the very end? And no, the end isn't a joyful moment, but what if it was? And yeah, it's definitely an interesting topic that triggers many, 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 many points of view. So if we can let go of some of them, our lives will be easier and more fun with our animals. And also from the point of view of our animals, a lot of times also people don't consider what is it like for the animal. We have all these assumptions about what it's like for them, but to actually be quiet and ask them is a totally different story yet again. And so we're going to look at that part too. I'm really excited for this. It's a 2-part telecall, 3 hours in each day. So it's 6 hours total. You get with just literally talking about this. It has no prereqs and it's starting soon. So please join us if this is something that is interesting to you and that you've been struggling with, or if you just want to explore that as a possibility for the future that you might have with your pet.
Yeah, and remembering that it can be something totally different, even if you've had other animals die in your care, over the years. If you've had other animals help and transition them, you can have a totally new journey and a totally new experience with this. So yeah, what gift could it be for you and other, pack members as well, whether it's your own family or whether it's other furry family members. That was tricky to say, furry family members.
I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, because if you've got other dogs or other cats or other animals around too, how is it for them? And please know that if you're interested, join us, and you get to ask questions. You can ask Susie and I questions. We give tools, we give processes, so it can be a very different journey to one that most people, like I say, they dread it, and it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah. What else is truly possible with all that? So, and that's what we're always looking at, and, just because also you just mentioned, I literally just a few months ago had to part with my friend Charlie, and, did I cry? Yes. Was it easy? No, but it could have been even more dreadful if I didn't have the tools, and it could have been a real big struggle if I didn't have any tools. And I'm so grateful for all the tools that were available or are available, and all the different ways that, I could engage with this. So, please, it's not about laughing through the process. Is not what we're trying to promote. Although if that's what's happening for you, then please, by all means, because that's the other thing too. Death in our world, in our different societies, depending on where you grew up and how you were introduced to that topic altogether, is so different for each culture. And yet a lot of times it's also seen as, now it's a wrong thing and it shouldn't happen. And it's this this really strong emotion that you're supposed to have. And so there's all that too. You're not allowed to laugh and celebrate through that. And if people do it, they're seen as crazy. And so, that's another part. But the animal kingdom actually deals with death in a very different way than we do. And we can learn a lot about that too, if we're willing to open ourselves up to that.
Yeah, and that's another major point as well. The healing that it affords all of the people that are involved is incredible too. So if you're interested, come and join Susie and I this coming weekend. You do get recordings of the class. So if you aren't able to join us live, you can watch the replays, and you have that for the rest of your life. You have that information and those tools for the rest of your life. So yeah, come and join us.
All right. Thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you, everyone.
And thanks, Viv, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.